Ancient Greek clubs were associations of ancient Greeks who were united by a common interest or goal. Types. The earliest reference of clubs in ancient Greece appears in the Law of Solon, which is quoted in the Digest of Justinian I. This law guaranteed the administrative independence of such associations if they kept within the bounds of the law. The Digest mentions these associations for religious practices, burial, trade, privateering, and communal meals. It also mentions deemed citizen groups based on subdivisions of land, and phratries, kinship groups. Other than this law, information about the clubs have been found primarily on inscriptions, including those related to burial practices and common meals. Political. During the time span of 448 and 431 BC, that is between the end of Persian Wars and the start of the Peloponnesian War, there were political clubs called hetaria within both the oligarchic and democratic parties. Supposed members included Themistocles, a leader in the Athenian democracy; Pericles, a statesman, orator, and general of Athens; Cimon, an Athenian statesman and general, who had 100 club member hetera following him. The purpose of these associations was to secure favorable results at elections and in the courts. At this time their actions were not regarded as harmful or illegal by ancient Greek society. The bitterness of party struggles in Greece during the Peloponnesian War meant that in many states they became a threat to local constitutions and to democratic institutions. Aristotle mentions a secret oath taken by the members of oligarchic clubs, containing the promise, "I will be an enemy to the people, and will devise all the harm I can against them." At Athens, the Athenian coup of 411 BC, a conspiracy against their democracy was engineered, in part, by these clubs, which existed there and in the other cities of the Delian League. This is an example of how some of these political clubs had become secret conspiracies working outside the constitution. Religious. Ancient Greek religious clubs focused on the worship of a particular deity and had several names including Thiasoi, Iranoi and Orgians. The Thyasa and Orgians clubs were often connected with deities foreign to the area and whose rites were of an orgiastic nature. These were deities that were not formally recognized and guaranteed by the state, which meant no state provision was made for their worship. Private individuals or groups had to provide priests, temples, sacrifices for non-state deities, and this was the purpose of many of the religious clubs. The state, as the Law of Solon shows, had no problem with the introduction of worship of foreign deities provided it did not infringe the law and was not morally unwholesome. These religious clubs had all the rights of legal corporations. There were clubs supporting the cult of foreign deities such as Sabazius, Mater Magna and Attis, Adonis, Isis, Serapis, Mentoranus. These were especially prevalent in seaports like the Piraeus, Rhodes, Smyrna. A passage in Demosthenes shows that the initiation at an early age in the rites of Sabazius did not gain credit for Aeschines in the eyes of the best men. The members of these religious clubs included women, freedmen, foreigners and slaves, but rarely people who held citizenship by birth. An inscription found by Sir Charles Thomas Newton at Cnidus contains a mutilated list of members of a Thyasos, includes apparently only one Cnidian citizen out of 12, 4 slaves, and probably 7 foreigners. This would suggest that it was the foreign population in the cities of Greece that tended to participate in this type of religious club organization. Much of the evidence for the organization of religious clubs comes from inscriptions from Greece. The religious associations took on organizational forms in imitation of the constitution of the city in which they were based. The clubs had laws, an assembly and magistrates or officers and a secretary, as well as priests or priestesses, and organized finances. Rules regulated the conditions of admission, which involved an entrance fee and an examination as to character, the contributions payable by the month, and the steps to be taken to enforce payment, e.g., exclusion in case of persistent neglect of this duty. Rules also governed the use to be made of the revenues, such as the building or maintenance of temple or clubhouse, and the cost of crowns or other honors voted by the assembly to its offices. This assembly, in accordance with the law, elected its officers once a year, and these, like those of the state itself, took an oath on entering office, and gave an account of their stewardship at the end of the year. For further information on the organization of these clubs, see Le Guin, or folk art. Folk art also states that these clubs did not function in any sense as benefit clubs, or offer relief to the sick and needy. Religious clubs increased in number and importance in the later periods of Greek history, and a large proportion of the inscriptions relating to them belong to the Macedonian and Roman empires. One of the most interesting, found in 1868, belongs to the 2nd century AD and reveals the worship of Tyrannus at Laurium. This Phrygian deity was introduced into Attica by a Lycian slave, employed by a Roman in work in the mines at Laurium. He founded the cult and the Eranos which was to maintain it, and seems also to have drawn up the law regulating its ritual and government. This may indicate how similar religious clubs were organized earlier in the period.